Okay, good afternoon. I'm Peggy Padalino, Vice President of Client Services at Jobfox, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Today's topic is post-interview strategies, and we'll talk about how you can keep strengthening your position after the interview and stay top of mind with the interviewer. So let's get started. I have a few people on the call today that I'd like to introduce. First is our keynote speaker, Shelley Piper. Shelley is president and founder of the Career Doc and also happens to be one of our fantastic certified resume writers. She's a former recruiter and headhunter, so Shelley truly understands the nuances that exist behind the scenes in the recruitment process. She's seen firsthand what helps and what hurts a seeker's position in the post-interview process. So today, Shelley is going to share some of those secrets with us in her presentation. We're also going to hear from William James. William is a Jobfox resume client, and he's going to share his story about how having his resume crafted by Jobfox not only helped him get the interview, but also helped him during and after the interview to articulate the specific value he could bring to that employer. And then last but not least, I also have with me some of our resume consultants. These are the folks who critiqued your resume, so you may recognize some of these names. We have Andrew Manning, Patrick Taylor, Ian Richards, and Jeremy Brooks. Okay, now to the agenda. Shelley has a 20-minute presentation that will help you formulate your strategy for gaining a competitive advantage over your competition. She's going to talk about a few key things that you can do to set yourself apart and stand out in the mind of the hiring manager. Then William is going to come on and tell his story. And then lastly, we will have a question and answer session. Now, the way we'd like to run the question and answer session is for you to ask your questions using the chat box on the right side of your screen. And the resume consultants are going to be collecting your questions throughout the session. We're going to try to answer as many as possible at the end. Okay, so either in the Q&A section or in the chat section, whichever you're most comfortable with, ask away. Okay, so we're ready to turn things over to Shelley.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. And thank you for the wonderful introduction, Peggy. I always love that when you do that. It's a real pleasure to be here today and to be able to present to you some very important strategies that can help you to strengthen your post-interview process. What we're finding is that there's a lot of people who don't really understand that after the interview, the selling process is not complete. It's not done. It's still going. It's still continuing. And there's a lot of tactics that you can utilize to capitalize on during this time that can help to steer the decision in your favor. And we're going to review some of those strategies. There were so many strategies and tactics that I wanted to discuss, but toned it down to a few specific elements to help you at least get started in developing a new post-interview strategy. Okay. So the old way that a lot of job seekers approach their job search was, my observation has been, is more of a passive approach. In a way that does not differentiate you or capitalize on this opportunity to continue selling and making impact to steer the decision in your favor. The new approach puts you in control, puts you in a position of leadership where you're going to be learning tactics that you may or may not have thought of before that can help to strengthen your positioning for the position, and it's going to give you the competitive edge. So the typical job seeker used to prepare for the interview, utilizing more of a traditional strategy to prepare, conducts the interview, and they go, wow, that was great. I'm really interested in this company and this opportunity. They write a thank you letter, usually utilizing a more traditional approach that has absolutely no impact, and sits back, hides out, and waits for the phone to ring with their decision. The new approach we're going to teach you is some sort of step-by-step tactics that you can employ throughout the entire process to keep top of mind, to keep positioning that you are the candidate of choice for their particular company and for the challenges that are moving throughout this time. And we'll start with first taking a look at the the thank you letter. So just as resumes have undergone a dramatic shift in the past 25 years, so have thank you letters. About 25 years ago, the resume wasn't really that important. It was more of a formality that would generally be a single sheet of paper that briefly discussed a candidate's overall work experience and academic credentials. As the employment market has changed dramatically over the years, and the job market is increasingly competitive and dynamic, resumes had to change and become more powerful, targeted marketing tools designed to sell a candidate's skills, qualifications, and achievements to give them that competitive edge. So is the same for thank you letters. For opportunities that you are very interested in, I challenge you to take this to the next level. Some of the strategies to consider incorporating into your thank you letter, either if you decide to do this by yourself or if you decide to work with one of Jobfox's professional resume writers who can help you in this process, is to decide, if the hiring company had shared with you some of their challenges with you, you want to take this opportunity to relate how your experience is tied directly to that current challenge or the current need of the organization. For example, suppose they're in the midst of a turnaround in the market repositioning initiative. You want to share your past experiences in change management, reorganization, and company revitalization. Or you want to discuss how you were able to reverse their losses and deliver solid profit margins during this transitional time. Another example would be if the hiring company had shared a major problem they were currently working with to resolve, you want to be sure to highlight how you solved the same or similar problems before for other employers. You're still selling here. Another example is if the hiring company communicated to you an objective to hiring you, a reason why they were concerned about bringing you on board. You want to take this opportunity to respond to it in your thank you letter. Or lastly, if there was a situation where, during the interview process you realized that you forgot to mention specific projects that you had worked on, specific challenges or initiatives or qualifications that you bring to the table, and you're like, I forgot to mention that in the interview. This is your opportunity to communicate this in the thank you letter to make sure that understanding is not missed. By taking the time to really capitalize on this opportunity, especially for those employment opportunities that you're very interested in, and using a thank you letter as a second-tier marketing tool, you will be able to powerfully differentiate yourself from the other candidates that are being interviewed for the position. And on top of that, want to also add one additional tactic that you can incorporate with the thank you letter, and it's called a value-added response. And what this is that let's say that you are really entrenched in the interviewing process. You're at the third or the fourth level, you've passed the initial screening processes, and you're speaking directly to the key decision makers within the organization. In addition to sending your thank you letter, you can even take this to a whole other level of impact. Excuse me. So, for example, like within 48 hours after the interview, you want to write your powerful targeted thank you letter, as we have just discussed, and also provide something of additional value that can uniquely set you apart from others. And I'm taking this from examples from an esteemed colleague of mine, Don Straits, who works with a lot of C-level executives, and some of his examples of where he's utilized this to be very successful in helping clients to procure job offers. One example that he gave was one job seeker that he was working with had a great opportunity for a senior sales leadership position. And during that interview, his potential boss discussed how the salespeople were not successfully selling to C-level executives. The job seeker followed up by sending his potential boss a book on C-level selling strategies. And he added this to his thank you letter. Imagine the impact that would have as a person who's on the receiving end of this. This makes a tremendous impression upon them about this person really understands my pain points. They're listening very carefully to what my concerns are and what our struggles are, and they're going to be partnering with me in having to solve these problems. Some of the other examples that were given, that after an interview that was focused on building strategic alliances, a job seeker sent his prospective boss an email link to a contemporary article on strategic alliances. Or another example is a job seeker who sent a follow-up email on the new products that are going to be launched by a competitor. Another example is an administrative assistant who sent her prospective boss a list of office organization techniques. So not all of these examples need to be about sending out books. It can be as simple as sending an article as specific to some of the challenges that were discussed during the interview. It showcases that you're someone who's keeping abreast of your industry, that you're very committed to staying abreast of the challenges, of how the trends in the consumer markets, of the different sort of technologies and platforms and solutions that are cutting edge, that are being introduced into your industry to help companies to move through challenges. It really sets you apart from the competition. And I know, having been on the receiving end of that, just how that impacted my decision-making process and those candidates that I would push for us to hire. The next strategy is the importance of staying in contact and by maintaining ongoing positive contact. A lot of individuals, I find, are very hesitant to pick up the phone to call to follow up on an opportunity. But you want to make sure that you are following up with a call, and you want to make sure that you're creating some sort of a balance in this. Every sort of a job, career strategist has a different approach to this. Some people express to be very aggressive. I personally haven't been on the inside and the receiving side of that. Wouldn't recommend being overly aggressive because you can really turn some people off with such a strategy. I recommend something a little bit more in moderation. However, if you are pursuing, let's say, an opportunity in sales or business development, they do expect that you're more aggressive and they want to see this. So, be more aggressive. But for the other job seekers, I recommend something a little bit more toned down. And one of the ways that you can determine sort of how often you're going to be following up and how you're going to be creating your strategy to follow up is one of the most important things that you can do. And some people are doing this, some people are not doing this. So I'm just going to mention this, is to make sure that as you're bringing the interview to closure, that you make sure every single time that you ask, when do you expect to be making your decision? What is your hiring process, and what are the next steps? When could I expect to hear back from you on your decision? And then be quiet and listen to their response to gauge what kind of a culture you're working with, what kind of personalities you're working with, and you can determine what would make sense as far as following up. If they're expecting to be bringing closure to this in 4 weeks, then of course follow up every single week with a call in a way that's not imposing, but in a way that really expresses that you're committed and genuinely interested in their organization and in the opportunity. If they're mentioning to you that they're going to see this is going to be a longer hiring process because they're having difficulty getting the vice president to fly down to interview all the candidates, if they're giving you some sort of an indication like this, then you're dealing with a longer hiring process. And of course, calling every week unless it was a sales position would be annoying and would send a red flag to them, basically. And it wouldn't really help to be impactful in your post-job interview strategy. So just gauge accordingly. And one of the opportunities here that I think a lot of people miss, and I really want to stress this, again, the sales process is not complete after the interview. Okay? It's still going on, still maintaining, and that holds true for even if you were not the person, if you were turned down for that particular opportunity. It doesn't mean that the game is off. The game is still on if you handle it correctly with ongoing positive communication, and either by an email or by a phone conversation, expressing to the HR and especially to the key hiring manager, saying, I really enjoyed meeting with you, and I really enjoy the type of culture that your company has here. I'd be very interested in any other opportunities that may be coming up, or as what evolves for you. Please continue to keep me in mind. That is different than a lot of how other job seekers are approaching this. A lot of job seekers get offended that they weren't chosen for the opportunity, and they stop the communication. And they're missing the opportunity to continue to keep as a viable candidate for other opportunities that might be available, or even depending upon the type of relationship they have with the person who's interviewing them. If they feel comfortable, they could even pick up the phone and express, say, do you happen to know of anybody else who might be in need of this type of a role, by all means, to be more than interested in speaking with them, and just keeping a real positive relationship intact. So the fourth strategy that I really want to bring to your attention, because I find this to be very important, is about managing your mood. I know that this can be an emotional roller coaster going through this, and it's difficult to remain composed when you're getting frustrated, you're feeling disappointed. But one of the most important things that you can do for yourself is to really understand that even though companies are starting to open up and hire today, that word on the street is that the hiring process is still taking, in most cases, a much longer time than it used to in days past. So if you set your expectations accordingly, that this might be a long hiring process just because companies are being very cautious in making their decisions, and you respect that and you understand that, then when you are making your follow-up phone calls and maintaining that positive relationship that we just talked about, they're going to hear it in your tone. They're going to respond to the mood that you're projecting over the phone. And so many people overlook the importance of this. And also by setting realistic expectations, you're setting yourself up again so you're not going to be getting so disappointed and so frustrated and angry over this. And you're just going to be able to really move that much more efficiently and focused in your process because you've set realistic expectations on the front end. And one additional important note we want to make here about managing your mood and managing your professional disposition is a tendency for people to want to either vent or communicate about their interview experience online. It is so important to not do this. More than ever, recruiting managers and hiring managers are conducting online searches on prospective candidates to see what kind of a real personality or disposition they're dealing with. And if they're finding something out there that shows that you're not loyal, that you're not professional, that you're not ethical, that they can't trust you with information, it starts to set a red flag about them wanting to bring you on board as an employee. So even though you might be very frustrated or you might have had a bad experience, please don't resort to venting in a public online space. It will only come back to bite you. So as we said, the post-interview is still part of a selling process. And every good salesperson knows the importance of taking the time to reflect and learn from the interaction. And I hold this to individuals who are out there actively interviewing. Take a moment to quietly reflect upon the interview and take down notes of where could I improve upon my strategy? Where did I miss the mark? What additional kinds of unique questions could I add to my strategy so I could be more impactful in engaging them to understand and learn about their pain points or their challenges, or why the previous individual did not work out so well in this particular role? How can I smooth and streamline my answers to their questions so I'd be more impactful? It's really important to not just buzz on to the next activity, but to take the time to quietly reflect and take notes. One of the areas I really like to stress upon that you can really utilize in your post-interview strategy is to write down the pain points and write down the issues and the concerns that were discussed. And the reason why this is important is because, again, it's what you're going to be incorporating into your thank you letter, but also if it's a longer hiring process, it gives you the opportunity to remember what's keeping that hiring manager awake at night, and you can find specific online articles that you can send to them to keep in touch with them and to keep you top of mind and to keep you positioned as the key candidate for the opportunity. Okay. And the last point we want to take a look at here, again, there were so many areas that we could have discussed, but we had to reduce it down to just a couple of key points here. The idea of really understanding from your, what did I want to say here? Okay, so by learning, after the interview, realizing, where did I miss the mark? Where can I provide additional value into my interview? Again, one of the most key things that you can do to help you with your post-interview strategy is to be sure that you're incorporating, as you're closing the interview, to understand realistically what their hiring process is and what the next steps are and how long they deem it will take to turn this process around. And also, if you can get them to discuss some of the challenges so you get a realistic understanding of the situation. Also, again, are there additional questions or different ways of positioning your questions to help them to engage in sharing with you about their pain points and what's keeping them up at night, what their newest strategic initiatives are. Again, when you learn more about what's going on for them and when you understand their hiring process, you can then develop your post-interview strategy accordingly. Okay. So, and just to review, we've discussed the importance of creating a thank you letter that uniquely sets you apart from the competition and emphasizes your ability to address their specific pain points. You want to make sure it's perfectly written, and I recommend keeping it short and succinct versus incorporating sort of a novel style. You want to engage them, and you want to speak specifically about bottom line results, if and wherever possible. And when you are conducting your phone messages, it's important to have some ideas in mind on how you want to lead and engage that person on the phone to have the best impact. Although we won't be able to go into specific strategies on this call. Okay, and as we said, it was very important to remain positive and keep a positive disposition. Personality does matter. You want to make sure that when you're incorporating a strategy to be keeping in contact, that you want to monitor, engage it according to what their culture is or what would be comfortable for them while also continuing to be proactive. But you also want to make sure you're not sounding desperate or too aggressive. So you kind of want to create a strategy that is balancing what you're trying to create at that juncture. And then also the importance about keeping the door open, that just because perhaps they may have turned you down for that particular role, it doesn't mean that it might not be coming around again, where there might be restructuring or that person maybe doesn't work out or anything can happen behind the scenes. So by keeping that relationship positive and keeping the lines of communication open, you will continue to be a potential viable candidate for that organization, or maybe they might know of someone who needs someone with your expertise. Don't burn your bridges. Okay, and as we said, also take the time to reflect and learn from your interview. Think about every interaction, how it advanced or hurt your chances. And take notes and figure out ways that you can adjust your future interactions and continually see it as a continuous learning process. And then just ideas as you're repositioning your existing interview strategy. Were you prepared for the interview? Did you learn enough in the interview to launch an effective post-interview strategy? Was your follow-up crisp and effective? And what is your new plan going forward? So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I'm sorry that it had to be so short. We had to kind of review some of these strategies very quickly, but we had to keep it within our time limits. If you are looking for additional information on some additional tactics and strategies, we are going to be rolling out some webinar series to help people with their interview strategy, their post-interview strategy, also webinars on how to tap into the job opportunities that are not being published online. Just all sorts of good things are going to be going on that we're going to be offering. And that information is available on the website at thecareerdoc.com/blog/. And I'll give this back over to Peggy.
Great. Thanks, Shelley. That was really informative. We spend so much time and effort trying to get the interview and then prepare for the interview, and it feels like we really need to spend more time in our strategy after the interview. It's just as important. That thank you note it's such a great opportunity to remind the interviewer what a perfect fit you are for the job. I especially liked your examples of how you can do something relevant, send something relevant to the interviewer to show them that you understand their problems and have ideas on how to solve them, because the bottom line is that's what they really want. Let's face it, that's the reason you're there. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have William James, and William is calling in from the Pittsburgh area. William landed his job at Educational Management Corporation shortly after he had his resume written by Jobfox. And I'm going to let him tell his story and why he felt the process of having his resume rewritten made all the difference in his job search. So I'll turn it over to you, William.
Thank you, Peggy, and I'm glad to be here today to share my experience with all the participants today. And what I found to be the best benefit to me was the way that Jobfox took my experience, my accomplishments, and my educational background, and they created a document that was concise and to the point. This document that was created for me actually made me stand out from the rest, not only before but also during and after the interview process. The resume that Jobfox wrote helped me send meaningful follow-ups to my now current employer. I looked at my accomplishments on my resume, and I was able to write a synopsis of why I was the best person for the job. And it was very easy to do that because of the document that I had prepared for me by Jobfox. The resume written by Jobfox, the answers I crafted during the interview, and a follow-up regarding my candidacy helped me land my current job today. And I encourage anyone out there that is in the same position that I was to take advantage of this service because it does make a big difference and to set you apart in today's competitive job market.
Well, I'm glad I didn't cut you off, William. That was well said. Thank you. Okay. And we really appreciate you taking the time to share your story, and congratulations on your new job.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So now we're ready to move on to the Q&A session, and the resume consultants have been collecting your questions. And the first question is going to Shelley, and the question is, when should a discussion about compensation occur if it was not discussed in the interview? Should I bring it up?
Okay. It's a very good question and commonly asked. And my answer is this. The thank you letter is not, let's just say some people have been asked, should I incorporate that into thank you letter? The thank you letter is not the time and the place to be discussing compensation. If you want to discuss compensation, my recommendation is discussing that on the phone, person to person, so that you can get a better sense of where they're at and further discuss it before their decision is made up on where you fall within to their candidate line. My recommendation is that you incorporate specific strategies within your interview to guide and to lead them to discuss the compensation earlier in the interview stage, so that you're not wasting your time and you're also not wasting their time. And there are different specific ways that you can do this, and to incorporate into part of your actual interview strategy where you're trying to then engage them in a conversation about compensation, just to get sort of a ballpark of where they're at. And then once you're starting to get further along into the process, to discuss the compensation by phone later on in the process when the opportunity becomes available.
Okay, great. All right, next question. And this is a question I think I will answer. And this question is really more about kind of something that would go on in the interview, but I chose this question because I think it's important to ask the right questions in the interview, so in the post-interview you have an effective strategy. So here was the question. Can you give me an example of some good questions to ask in an interview that will make a positive, lasting impression on the interviewer? So here's a question that I was asked in an interview probably about a year ago, and I thought it was something I'd never really thought about. I've heard it asked in different ways, but I really liked the answer, and the answer was, how do I get an A in this job? And what that does is it gives you some insight into what the hiring manager considers most important. And once you know that, you can target your answers and your follow-up to addressing their specific concerns. So it's a great open-ended question for you to really pull out, what is the problem that this hiring manager is trying to solve? And that's how you get an A. The other question that I think is helpful to pull this information out is to, especially in the situation where you're replacing someone, ask them, what were the greatest strengths and the biggest shortcomings of the person that held the position previously. Then you can really target your answers to hit on the strengths and make sure that you don't show any weakness in those areas where that person was weak. So again, I think these are two very good questions that really help you in your post-interview strategy. You need to think about that when you're in the interview so that you can, again, launch an effective post-interview strategy. Okay, the next question, I'm going to let one of our resume consultants answer. Patrick, you can answer this one. And the question is, I'd like to have my resume, cover letter, and thank you notes written by Jobfox. Do you have a package that includes all three?
Yes, we do. Actually, for everyone that's attending the webinar today, we include just that, the resume, which is, of course, rewritten and reformatted, and which we really infuse with our keyword optimization, which is really great, and the e-resume. Now, the e-resume is an electronic text format that's perfect for your online applications, for, say, when you're copy and pasting a resume into a box or just using it on a database. The cover letter is, of course, customized towards those positions that you're looking for. Now, really relevant to this session today with the thank you note, you can really customize that with all of the advice that Shelly's been giving you to really tailor the thank you note towards the employer and the company that you're looking for. And with that full package, you get everything that you're looking for in your resume. And also, once you've provided them with that information, gone to speak with them, that thank you note is always a great tool.
And as Shelly mentioned, you want that thank you note to be perfectly written. It's an opportunity to show your written skills as well as your communication skills. Okay, this question is for Shelly, and the question is, I've always wondered on this, so I'm anxious to hear your answer. Is it better to be in the beginning of the interview cycle or towards the end? Do you want to be the first one in the door, the middle one in the door, or the last one out the door?
Sometimes you have no choice.
Right, this is true.
Of course, from a strategic standpoint, if I had the situation you have control over, I prefer to be more towards the end of the process. You're more fresh on their mind as they're going through the interview process. They're realizing more and more what some of their additional key concerns will be that keep coming up, and you'll be able to address those in your conversation if you're steering the interview in direction that covers those areas. So the recommendation that if you are in the beginning of the interview process, again, the importance of being able to utilize some of those value-add response strategies that were quickly discussed, keeping in touch with phone calls, keeping in touch with relevant email, relevant links to keep you top of mind while you're still waiting for them to make their decisions. I highly recommend that.
Yeah, that's good. That's a great idea in a situation where you do have to go first. With a lot of the recruiters, especially hiring managers, not so much recruiters because recruiters are skilled interviewers, but with a lot of hiring managers, what I hear from them is that as the interview process moves along for a particular position, they do, as you mentioned, start to zero in themselves on the key skills they're looking for. So sometimes they don't even know the right questions to ask in the beginning. So if you can, try to position yourself further into the process. You're going to have a better interviewer. You're going to have the hiring manager is going to do a better job, and you will be more fresh in the mind. Okay. This last question, this one's going to go back to you, Shelly. And the question is, if I'm asked to provide references, should I call the references and ask permission to give the recruiter their name?
Absolutely, without question. If you're moving, even a better strategy is that as you're moving through you're starting to get interviews and you're moving through your interview process, be very proactive and reach out to your chosen references, either by email or voicemail or direct phone, and let them know that you're moving through the process and ask for their permission to be a reference. And then if at all possible, try to give them a little heads up on what kind of positions you're interviewing for, and, it depends upon your relationship with that person, but without question, you need to gain their permission, and I highly recommend letting them know that they might be getting a call so they can be better prepared to support you in getting the job.
Right. Okay. Great. And I'd just like to mention something, because I'm a reference for people oftentimes, and if I get a call from a recruiter and I haven't heard from that person, I will still take the call, obviously, but I certainly don't do as good a job as I can if someone has given me the title of the job that they're going for and some of the specific things that they would like for me to bring up with the reference, because they know better what that recruiter is looking for, and I'm happy to discuss those areas if I know. So not only just asking permission, but also keeping them informed on exactly the type of impression you'd like to leave with the recruiter so that it matches the particular job. Okay? It's really worth taking the time to do that. All right, I think that's it. We're running a little bit late, so I want to move along. If you have any other questions, feel free to send a message to your resume consultant. We also have a Twitter site, which I think we're going to have at the end. We'll show. Here it is. Or you can ask questions on Facebook or Twitter, or as I say, you can even call into your resume consultant, and they'll be happy to answer any questions we weren't able to address. So before we wrap up, if you would like help rewriting your resume, we are offering on our webinar series, for the attendees, we offer a special package and a discount for anyone that attends the workshop. It's our best price discount. It includes, as Patrick mentioned, the full resume rewrite, a cover letter, an e-version of the resume, and a thank you note. And this thank you note is formatted and designed so that you can easily plug in the specific things that you would like to accentuate when, that you've learned in the interview, your specific skills and how you're a fit. So it's a really well-designed thank you note that you can reuse for multiple positions. Okay? I'd like to close by saying thank you for attending, and I hope this information we shared was helpful. I wish you well in your job search. If you would like to purchase the package, Jeremy is going to be sending out a link in the next, will it go out today?
Yes, it'll be out in the next hour or so.
Okay, so you can buy the package that way. Or if you'd like to call in and talk to the resume consultant, just use the code word Shelley, because then we can offer you the special discounted package. All right, thank you, and that concludes today's webinar.